Hey Spilling the Sweet Tea fam, welcome back to my channel. Today we're making fried peach hand pies. The first thing I'm going to do is blanch my peaches. Because peaches are in season, I'm using fresh peaches in my recipe today. If you don't have fresh peaches, you can use frozen. To get a perfect peach, the best thing to do is to blanch your peaches. Blanching is going to allow for the skin to come right off. I always cut an X into the bottom of my peaches and then add it to hot boiling water. I let the peaches sit in the boiling water for about 30 to 45 seconds and then add it to an ice bath, just like I'm doing here. This is a quick way to get the peach skin off easily. You can see on the bottom where I made an X, this is going to allow for the skin to peel nice and easy. Look at that, easy peasy. Blanching is the method I use anytime I'm making homemade peach preserves. If you follow me for a long time, you know I started making my peach preserves at home using fresh peaches. This is the method that my mother used, and I'm always going to follow the Shirley May way. If it's in the middle of winter and you don't have fresh peaches, like I said, you can use frozen peaches or you can use canned peaches. But baby, nothing is like a fresh peach in this peach pie filling. Look how beautiful this peach is. So the next thing you want to do is get your cutting board. As you can see, my cutting board is acrylic. I get so many comments about this cutting board because people think I'm actually cutting things on my counter, but my cutting board is acrylic and see-through. All you want to do is cut your peaches in half and then remove the pit. Once you have the pit removed, all you want to do is cut up your peaches into cubes. You want to cut up your peaches in pretty large cubes because you're going to cook down your peaches in butter and sugar and all the things. So I still want nice chunks of peaches in my peach pie filling. I don't want it to be too mushy. If you guys have followed my channel for a while, you also know I love cooking the old-fashioned way. If you have my cookbook, then you know a lot of the recipes that are in my cookbook are old school Southern recipes. So recipes that your grandmother or great-grandmother or mother may have made. I honestly feel like a lot of these classic Southern recipes have been lost or may have died with our loved one and not passed on to the next generation. So it's important for me to share the old school way to make dishes the way my mother taught me, because I want to be able to pass it down to my daughter, as well as I get so many of my followers asking me how to make certain dishes that were made the old school way. And baby, the old school way was always using fresh peaches like I'm doing here. To cook down your peaches, you want to cook them in some butter because everything is better with butter. I had a lot of peaches, so I'm using 1 stick of butter, but if you want to just use 4 to 5 peaches, just use a half a stick of butter. Now adding your brown sugar, you're going to need half a cup of brown sugar, and you're also going to need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. To your 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, you want to add half a teaspoon of lemon juice and then give everything a good mix. Like I said, I'm doubling my recipe, so if you want to do half, just do half of all of the measurements that I've said. In order to thicken your peach filling, you want to add 6 tablespoons of cornstarch. Give your cornstarch a really good mix and make sure everything is well combined and that there's no cornstarch lumps in your peach pie filling. When I tell you where I was making this peach pie filling smelled so good and took me back. I used to love anything that my mother made with fresh peaches. To add an additional sweetness to my peach filling, I just added a 1/4 cup of sugar. The brown sugar did not do enough for me, so I just added some additional white sugar to my pie filling. Once everything has come together, your peach pie filling should look a little bit like this, nice and thick. Set aside to cool and let's work on your pie dough. You're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Once you add your 2nd cup of all-purpose flour, you want to add 3 teaspoons of powdered sugar. To make my pie dough, I'm using my Miss Lena's dough bowl. This bowl is a replica of the biscuit bowl or dough bowl that I saw my mother use my entire childhood. To order one, you can find it on my website, spillingthesweettea.com. After you add your powdered sugar, you want to add half a teaspoon of salt. And to make it the Shirley May way, I'm adding Crisco and butter. I want to make sure I mix up all of my dry ingredients really well before I add my butter and my Crisco. You can use all butter if you want, but for me, something hits different when you use Crisco. To your dry ingredients, you want to add 4 tablespoons of butter cubed and then 4 tablespoons of Crisco. Baby, if you want truly throwback pie dough, use lard instead of Crisco. My mama used to cook with lard all the time, but then she evolved to using Crisco. And when she started getting serious about her health, she started cooking with olive oil, period. So all you want to do is use a pastry blender to cut in your butter and your Crisco into your dry ingredients. You want your dough to resemble sand, so you want to make sure you use a pastry blender or a fork to make sure everything is combined well. Now you want to add half a cup of ice cold water. To make sure my water was ice cold, I just added some ice cubes and let it sit for a little bit. I then discarded my ice cubes once it was time to add the water to the bowl to make the pie dough. So this is the same method that I use to make my biscuits. I always use a fork and I always make a well in the center. That's where I added the water, and I'm slowly combining all of the ingredients to make a dough ball. This is what I love so much about this bowl. Because of the way the bowl is shaped, it makes it easy for me to combine all of the ingredients. I feel like every time I use this bowl, I should be singing an old hymn because it really takes me back to the old days. Like I said, this bowl is a replica of the one that my mother used my entire childhood. Once you have your dough ball formed, you want to knead it for just a little bit, and then you want to chill it. It's very important that you chill your dough for at least an hour. I would say at least 2 hours before you roll it out to make your fried pies. I know making it this way is a longer process, but it's going to be so worth it because these fried pies are so good. What I should have done right here was divide my dough in two. I end up doing it, but I didn't record myself doing it. But you just want to divide your dough in two and then wrap it in saran wrap and put it in the refrigerator for about an hour or two. Baby, sometimes I don't get everything on film, but you see when I come back with the dough, it is divided in two. See there? It's in two pieces. Now all you want to do is roll out your dough. You just want to add some flour to a clean surface. Make sure you clean your countertops really well. And then remove the pie dough from the saran wrap and add it to your floured surface. You're going to need a rolling pin for this. And you want to make sure you flour your rolling pin as well. Once you flour your rolling pin really well, all you want to do is roll out your dough just like this. You don't want to roll out your dough too thin because once you cut out the circles of your dough, you're going to roll that circle out again. I would say to roll the dough out to 1/8 an inch and then cut it into circles. I didn't have a 4.5-inch biscuit cutter, but I did have a 4.5-inch food container that I used instead. If you have a large biscuit cutter or a large cookie cutter, you can use that. Making this dessert is definitely a labor of love, but when I tell you these turn out so good, it is so necessary to make this pie dough from scratch and to use fresh peaches. Believe me. Baby, look at this pie dough. Do you see those bits of Crisco and butter in this pie dough? When I tell you it is so good. So this is what I used to cut out my disc. Like I said, I didn't have a really large biscuit cutter. You would think I would, considering I make biscuits all the time, but I didn't have one, so I used this instead. Baby, you know what else would work? A martini glass. A martini glass would work for this as well. Once you have your disc cut out, the next thing you want to do is roll out each disc a little bit more because you want the disc to be large enough to fold in half once you have your filling in the center. I would say the size that you're going for is the size of a small tortilla. This is about the size you need for your hand pies. Look how beautiful this dough is. I can't say it enough. Once your pie filling has completely cooled, you just want to add 1 tablespoon of the pie filling into the center of your disc. Fold over the pie dough just like this and get you a fork, and now all you want to do is crimp the edges. This step is very important because you don't want any of that delicious pie filling to leak out when you're frying these pies. I normally use peanut oil, but I didn't have any, so I use vegetable oil to fry my pies. I always use that trick I learned from Rachel Ray. If bubbles form around your wooden spoon, your oil is ready and nice and hot and ready to fry. So all you want to do is drop your peach pies into the oil just like this. I think the oil was probably around 350 degrees. Once it's brown on one side, all you want to do is flip it over and brown it on the other side, just like this. It doesn't take long for these pies to brown on each side. You don't want to cook them too long because you don't want them to burn. Your fried peach hand pie should look a little bit like this, golden brown and delicious. Once your pies are brown on both sides, all you want to do is remove them from the oil. Make sure to let any excess oil drip out of the pies and then add it to a wire rack. Anytime you are frying anything, you want to add it to a wire rack so the bottoms do not get soggy. For your glaze, you're just going to need 1 cup of powdered sugar. I was out of milk, so I had some peach nectar in my refrigerator, and that's what I used to add to my powdered sugar. Baby, it honestly punched up the flavor of this glaze. So if you don't have milk, just use a couple tablespoons of peach nectar. Baby, I was improvising. I was not about to let the spoiled milk in my refrigerator ruin my recipe. But for traditional vanilla glaze, you just want to add milk instead of peach nectar like I'm doing here, and then also some vanilla extract. I didn't add vanilla extract. I just used the peach nectar, which was already sweet, so I didn't want to make the glaze too sweet. Once your pies have cooled a little bit, all you want to do is drizzle on that glaze. Listen to me when I say these fried peach pies with this peach glaze on top was something delicious. As I said earlier, I love sharing old school recipes with you guys, and this is a Southern classic. These fried peach pies with this peach glaze on top is so good. You know a recipe is always gonna hit if you fry it in a cast iron skillet and you use Crisco. For more Southern recipes, grab a copy of my cookbook, Memories on a Plate, Southern Recipes I Learned from My Mama. It is linked on the homepage of my website, spillingthesweettea.com. These fried peach ham pies were a 10 out of 10. They were absolutely delicious. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this recipe. These peach fried ham pies were a 10 out of 10 and most certainly Spilling the Sweet Tea approved. So you don't miss my next recipe, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Spilling the Sweet Tea. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.